Hey guys, what's going on? This is TrainTrackTrav here, and today we're at the workstation. Pretty different. I'm not normally a workstation type of person, but here we are at the workstation, and I've got a bit of a project here. I was looking at some of my older videos, and from way back like 2009, I saw a video where I showed this flat car. This is a Walther's model. N&W 8-axle depressed center heavy-duty flat car, and I had on it this old beat-up Santa Fe Alco, and I had it resting on it like that. Now, I had seen the pictures from that video, so many times. I really didn't give it much thought until I think last night. I saw it and I thought, I bet you we can make a project out of that. So I'm thinking, why don't we modify what's left of this Alco, put it on this flat car, and make it look like it's on its way to the scrapper or something, because this locomotive doesn't look like it's ever going to run again. It's sad to see, but it's a long story how it got this way. I'll tell you later. But I think it would look really cool like that. But in order to do that, we're going to need some materials. Now, this is something I've never done before, and I think it would be really cool to go in and just see what happens when I try something like this for the very first time. So we're going to be doing that, and I hope you guys will come along with me on this project encounter, and we're going to see what kind of trouble we can get into here at the workstation. And I guess there's nothing else to do other than get started. Okay, so here's the locomotive we're going to be putting on our flat car. She's back on the camera again. It's this old Santa Fe 6692. It looks to me like an RS11. I should know this, but it's got the big fan in the back and the high nose and those funky angles at the corners, and these vents along here and that big vent right there. So all the signature traits of an RS11. So I'm going to say it's an RS11, but I'm sure somebody will correct me. The reason that this locomotive looks the way it does is it was neglected. Sadly, I got this as a set. Came with some other cars, and this engine ended up being stored improperly, and it got exposed to the heat and the elements, and it warped this part here, and the cab roof is gone, and the handrails are gone, and it just experienced a wee bit of life. But that's actually turned out to be a blessing in disguise, because look at what we can do with it. The frame is bent, and I'm looking at the bent frame, and it reminds me of that video, I'm sure all the rail fans have seen it, where they're lifting an EMD off of a ship and they drop it. So it kind of reminds me of that, so maybe that's what happened to it in our imagination, or it wrecked, or who knows. But the body shell can come off quite easily, and we're left with that. What I want to do now is I want to clean this frame, get this dust off of it, and we're going to end up removing these gearboxes here so that it just kind of rests on the fuel tank, or actually it's going to end up resting on the steps here. Maybe we'll take care of that. But yeah, let's clean our locomotive frame. Okay, so here's what we're going to be using to clean the frame of the locomotive. Here's our body shell. I'm going to set that aside now. And I have here a cup of water, dish soap, and a little bit of general surface cleaner. Just because I'm not worried about taking up any paint, because, well, look at it. And I have a little toothbrush here for scrubby scrub, and Q-tip, or as our friends in the UK call it, a cotton bud, a wall bud, or something like that. I don't know. I watch too many IC82 videos. Anyway, we're gonna scrubby scrub our frame of our locomotive here, hopefully. I already did the body shell. And I'm just gonna gently but firmly get what I can with the brush. Again, there's handrails. What's left of handrails are in the way. And kind of get it looking presentable. Now, I know this engine's going on a flat car to the scrapper, but dust like that, to me, that doesn't look realistic. So maybe if I ever get any weathering powder or something, I'll hit it with that. I can't get in there with a toothbrush, so I'm going to use my Q-tip and just get rid of this dirt and dust and get the grubbies. Get rid of the grubbies. Now that I've cleaned off the frame of the locomotive, what I did is I went into the kitchen and I did the unthinkable. I rinsed it off with sink water. But you gotta remember, since it's not going to run again, so there's no harm done. And I'm just drying off what I can reach with a piece of kitchen roll towel, paper towel. And I think I may need to put this in front of the fan and dry it off. Okay, so while the locomotive is apart and drying, I think that what we're going to have to do is this, what's left of the truck assembly, it's got to come out. Because one, it's going to impede my plans on how to set the engine on the flat car, and two, that doesn't really look like the most realistic traction motor and lead cable wire setup I've ever seen. It looks nothing like the actual inside of a real locomotive truck, because this is a model and it's not the real thing, and the models don't work like the real things do. So we're going to take this off, get rid of our truck assembly. I need to disconnect this shaft here. Again, like I say, my first time doing this, I have no idea what I'm doing. So I'm going to work at it, get these apart, and remove the truck assembly from the chassis, and get. I'm just trying to figure out exactly how to do this, and get this ready to be mounted on the flat car, and then we'll put the shell back on, and it'll look something like that. Okay, so we've had a little bit of time now, and look, I have removed the gearboxes. The gearboxes are free of the locomotive, but in doing that, I have noticed something, and it may be a bit of a problem. Not that we can't fix it, but it's just another thing to consider, and let me show that to you right now. So what I'm seeing here that we may need to overcome is that with these removed, okay, there's this hole right here, and because there's no roof on the cab, that's now see-through. You can see straight down into what's going to be the bed of the flat car. So what I think I should do is almost, if you will, put almost kind of a floor down there. Again, this is difficult because there's no inside cab detail on this locomotive. This is an old model that was made in the 90s, and it was, even back then, it was a cheapo model. So there's no cab detail. My thought is this: if I take this off like that, okay, there's our frame. Once again, for the millionth time, we're setting the shell aside. I might be able to put a floor in right here. And I would do that, I would kind of make it look like a wood floor, like a temporary wooden floor. And I would do that by using balsa wood. Now, I just happen to have just a little bit of balsa wood laying around. So I think maybe I can use, probably at the very most, 2 of these strips. Cut them to length, probably just 1, and make myself a floor that would go inside the cab where the floor of the cab would actually be. I may put something in here to cover this up, kind of look like it's plated over. Again, I don't know. We're just going to go and figure this out as we move along. So I'm going to have a bit of a brainstorm, think for a while, and see what we can do to render this situation. And in just a moment for you guys, I'll be back with an idea. Okay, so what I did is I thought for a while, and I figured that it wouldn't hurt if I took some of this here, which is cardstock, and I cut a few squares out, and I slid them over the hole where the truck used to be. So now it's not perfect, but you can see the hole is filled. Like I say, it's not perfect, but it doesn't need to be, because there's going to be a body shell on the top, and that is going to be facing down, and there's going to be simulated wood blocks holding it up. So I've got that in place, and all I did was I took this cardstock, I used an X-Acto knife, and I cut it to the size that I need, and then for the one on the top and the one on the bottom, I took a big fat Sharpie and I colored it black, so it's not this giant white square where there used to be a truck. Now we see about doing something to the cab. I'm cutting away at this balsa wood here, and I'm thinking that if I put 5 of these things together, I did a little bit of measuring I call eyeballing, and I found that 5 of them next to each other should be perfect to go in what would be the front wall of the cab of the locomotive, because it's a high nose locomotive, so what would be the back of the nose on the inside of the cab would be rather quite perfect. Like I say, I'm cutting up this balsa wood. One of these sticks that I have is like a meter long, so if I'm cutting it into pieces, you know, that small, I'm gonna go through this at like 1 every year. So I'm gonna see if this will fit and if it'll work. Line them up side by side and kind of make a wall with it. That's what I love about this stuff. It's so versatile. If you've got the right paints and stuff to make it look realistic, you can do anything with it. So here's those 5 strips of balsa wood. I basically just took a little bit of super glue, a dot on each end, and super glued them together. And that's what I end up with. And I think it's going to work pretty well. I may decide, well, I will decide, I'm going to color it a different color, because wood color on the front of the cab of a diesel locomotive does not look quite right. So I'll probably go with a darker color. I don't know. I'll have to see. But for now, that looks pretty good. I may sand it to get rid of some of the seams, but for now, that really does work quite well. It fits perfectly in the front of the cab of the locomotive. So there's another step done. In order to get the front wall of balsa wood to fit into the cab of this locomotive, I need to get rid of this piece of plastic right here. That is on the front right here. That's where the air horn used to be, but the horn is long gone. And this needs to come off so that we can have a front wall. Easy. So here's the strips of balsa wood that I glued together. I experimented with colors I did one side orange. It looks red, but it's trust me, it was orange at one time. And then I went with this yellow color. And let's see here. Let's see if I can get it in. See. There it is. Goes in pretty nicely. Doesn't look perfect, but I think that looks pretty good. Okie dokie. So what I think I'm going to do instead, I've been thinking about this for a while, and what I think I'm going to do instead for the floor of the locomotive, of the cab I should say, is I cut out a piece of cardstock here. That off to the side. And I have my engine here, and I'm just going to drop that in there like that, and that'll be the floor. Okay, so here's the shell of the locomotive right here, and I'll flip this over. That's where the floor is going to be, is level with these, because that's the walkways into the cab of the engine. So what I did is I took, once again, trusty cardstock and balsa wood to the rescue. I cut 2 lengths of balsa wood, and I measured the inside parameters of the cab, and I cut a piece of cardstock to those dimensions, and then to each side I glued balsa wood. And if we do a little check here, we can see that drops right in. And I'm going to glue it on the sides here. I think that the next thing I should do is kind of give this some color, maybe like a dark gray or maybe black. I'm not sure because I've never been in the cab of an RS11. So now we're going to put it in. Alright. Now, with this out, the shaft off of that motor, we can now place the floor, if you will, of the locomotive, of the cab, in its new position. I think that we should do that now. I think the color is fine. Like I said, it's been boarded over, so I might as well keep it. If I don't like the color, I can tear it out and redo it. So I'm going to take my trusty glue here. Things you can do with super glue and balsa wood, possibilities are endless. Oh, hey, get in there, come on. There you go. Like that. Like that, nope. Come on. Light up. Light up. What is this? What is this? What is this? Alright, the floor to the cab is in. Now for the real test. See if it still fits on its frame. And it does. How beautiful is that? Now we just got to fill in this part right here, and the engine is pretty much done. The inside back wall of the cab is finally completed. I would like to apologize for going back and forth between tasks and not doing what I said I was going to do. But anyways, this is the same thing as I did in the front. I just took 5 strips of balsa wood, glued them together, and I placed them in there, and they were kind of a squeeze, but they fit. Now what we're going to do is mount the locomotive on the flat car, and let me show you how I'm going to do that. Here's a close-up picture that I found online of a locomotive resting on a flat car. Now what I'm going to try and recreate are those boards in there. You see those? That's what I'm going to try to recreate with the materials that I have to the best of my abilities. So what I did is this. Same thing. It's just balsa wood that I stacked crisscross and I glued the corners. And now we're going to rest the locomotive onto that, and that's going to go on the flat car. Now this is the first one that I've made. Now I need to make the second one. Once again, as you can see, I'm cutting up another strip of balsa wood, and this is going to be the cradle, the second cradle for the rear of the locomotive. Now, I've measured these strips here, these little tiny pieces, and I found them to be just a hair over an inch long. And that seems to be perfect for the use that I have for it. So now, I'm just finishing up this one here. And you always want to rotate to minimize. If you don't, you'll crush the wood. Now this one here with the black spot on it is the first one that I did, and I'm using that one as the template for each of the other pieces. Make sure you always use the first one that you cut, and that's why I marked it so that I know it's the first one, as your template. Otherwise you may have variances in the length of these actual pieces, and then you'll end up with pieces of different lengths, and it'll be hard to assemble, and it won't be a whole lot of fun. So that's what I'm doing right now, and after we get these all cut up, all 12 of them, we've got 9 more to go, we'll assemble them, and I'll show you how I do that. Work on the second cradle is beginning, and has begun, and is almost done. And we're just getting this all set up for the locomotive. Now, as you can see, all I'm doing is just gluing these with a dot of glue on each end. Very, very simple. And as long as you have a reasonably steady hand, you can do this. I'm not crazy steady, but I've got just enough of a steady hand. But like I say, you don't have to be, you know, ninja skills to be able to do this. So here's the final one, and then we attach these to the underside of the locomotive. Okie dokie, here's the underside of the locomotive, and I have glued our cradles to the bottom there. And as you can see, well, as of right now, the locomotive is resting on the fuel tank. But if that goes on the flat car, because it's got a depressed center, the flat car has a depressed center, the fuel tank clears it, and it rests on these. So there's the front, and it's the same story in the back. Now all that's left to do is place this on the flat car and see how it looks. Okay, so I've mounted the locomotive on the flat car. I need to go pick that car up out of the yard. I'm going to use this shunter here, number 4441, to go pick it up, and we're going to do the big reveal and see how it looks. Alright guys, here it is. As you can see, I've brought the locomotive on the flat car outside, simply because the lighting is more natural, obviously, and I quite like that. So now I'm going to go over a few little details that I skipped, and also give out a special shout out. Now, one of the things that I would like to point out is on the top here. As you can see, I left a gap there between the back of the cab and the roofline of the hood. The reason I did that is, well, there were two reasons. One is that it was going to be very tricky to get a piece of wood in there. And second of all, I kind of like it because if the light hits it just right, you kind of see something inside there, which is the motor. And it kind of gives the illusion that the prime mover is still in the locomotive. I also mounted a little air horn here because I thought that would be quite appropriate. And I also did not actually permanently glue the load to the car. I would still like to have that flexibility. I may in the future, but I'm sure that if you wanted to, you could use some double-sided tape that no one would see, and that would hold it securely to the car. I would like to finish off this video with a shout out to a fellow YouTuber, Mr. Gary Wise, who runs his own channel under that same name. I've provided a link in the description to his channel. His channel focuses on N-scale, and he's basically taking us through the demolition of his old layout and his new layout, which is Kansas City Southern and Norfolk Southern in the present day. So please be sure to check out his channel and give him a subscription. Anyways, for now, that's about it. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a like. Thanks for watching, God bless, and we'll see you guys next time.